Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola Law Firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Today we have a special program, What's New in the Law Schools, and our special guest is Karen Sloan. She's a reporter for the National Law Journal and the New York Law Journal, and she covers education issues and law school education. Karen, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
As we talk about what's new in the law schools, how are applications to law school going in terms of trends?
Sure. So enrollment in law school really is the big story in legal education right now. Enrollment, law school just isn't as popular as it used to be. They hit a kind of a high mark in enrollment in 2010, and ever since then, each year they're enrolling fewer and fewer students. So overall, first-year enrollment in law school down 29% over the past 6 years. So that's a big drop.
So if someone's really interested in a legal career as a first or second career, they stand a chance of getting into a law school somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, these days, your odds have never been better than landing a seat in law school. Because fewer people are applying, schools are taking students who 5-6 years ago wouldn't have made the cut. So even if you don't have really high LSAT scores right now or a really high undergraduate GPA, you're going to get a second look from schools that maybe you wouldn't have before.
And are there some schools that have even waived the LSAT requirement and are looking at other criteria?
Well, that's a sticky subject. As it stands right now, rules from the ABA require law schools to use the LSAT as part of the admissions process. Law schools are supposed to look at the LSAT, but also your undergraduate GPA and, other factors, extracurriculars, that kind of thing. Now, there are a few schools who are breaking away from that and are currently accepting GRE scores or have said they will accept GRE scores in the future, Harvard Law School being a very notable one. But those are really small pilots. There's only a couple of schools who are doing that. So right now, the LSAT still remains the major way to get into law school.
And is there a trend where students are no longer going right to law school after completing an undergraduate degree, that they're working or gaining some experience in a legal or business setting?
Yeah, of course, you always had some students who didn't go directly into law school. But what I'm hearing from admissions officials more and more these days is that they're actually looking for students who have, a few years more than that of work experience. And they have some interesting reasons why. One thing is that legal employers like to see work experience beyond just being in school. They like to see that people know how to work on teams, they know how to interact with clients. Law schools think that having students with work experience in different backgrounds actually makes for a more interesting classroom environment and more interesting discussions. And what I've heard from some admissions officials is that students who have some work experience have a better sense of what they actually want to do with their law degrees. So there's some real advantages to having some professional experience under your belt before you show up to law school.
And once students, let's say they're accepted and they arrive at law school, has the first year law student experience changed in recent years?
Well, that's a tough one to answer, yes and no. The 1L year still is the most rigid of the 3 years you have in law school. So that's when you get kind of the core curriculum of the classes that you've heard most often about. And these are the required classes: constitutional law, torts, contracts, that type of thing. But some schools, and quite a few schools actually, are now experimenting with supplementing some of those traditional core courses with some more interesting things. Some of them are starting to do some professional development in the very first year to help students figure out, okay, what is it I actually want to do with my law degree? What is the role of a lawyer in society? Some schools are experimenting with like mini courses on business acumen, how to read a balance sheet, things that you would need to know if you were advising a corporate client. So there is some experimentation in the first year, but like I said, the first year is still the most rigid in terms of the classes that you need to take.
And is there more support offered today for the law students by many of the law schools in terms of, let's say, extra help or bringing their writing or study skills up to par?
Yeah, there definitely is. I think there's sort of the image, I don't know if you remember the movie, the Paper Chase, there's the image of law school as being, like professors terrorizing their students with, cold calling them and trying to humiliate them. And so law schools still have this reputation as kind of a stressful, pressure cooker, scary kind of place. And for sure, there are still elements of that in law school. The Socratic method, which is also another way to say just cold calling students in class to make sure they've read the material and grill them. That still happens, but it is a kinder, gentler experience than what you would have seen 30, 20, even 10 years ago. A lot of, there's been some criticism of legal education in terms of putting too much pressure and emotional toll on students. Studies have shown they have a high rate of alcohol abuse and depression. And some administrators are really taking that to heart, and they are adding things like on-site counselors. So students who are feeling despondent or in depression or having some sort of an issue have people that they can go to. And they're trying to create more supportive environments, things like bringing therapy dogs. This is a popular one. Therapy dogs or therapy animals onto campus during exams when students are really stressed out. So they'll bring in some cute puppies and the students can pet them and try to just chill out a little bit. So you are seeing efforts to make the whole environment a little more inclusive and less stressful.
And, of course, today with new subjects making their way into the law school curriculum, they might be offering courses in animal law or dog law as well.
Sure. I mean, there is an endless. I'm never cease to be amazed at some of the upper level courses and electives and how specific and interesting and kind of far out there some of them are. So you're probably right. There's probably a dog law course somewhere.
And what are some of the more interesting upper-level courses that students might be able to take at some law schools?
Well, gosh, I mean, like I said, they really run the gamut. But one thing that I think is interesting is that I'm seeing more of a push for schools to offer courses that are tied to current events. So, for example, right now, last semester and in the coming semester, some schools offered classes specifically tied to Donald Trump. And these classes were looking at sort of the executive powers, the limits of executive powers, and they were using events that were unfolding in real time, like the Muslim travel ban, or, I'm sure, the semester's over for most classes, but they would have a field day with the firing of FBI Director Comey. And students apparently are really, really interested and engaged when they have a class that is following events that they're following in the news and feel relevant and up to date.
And we also probably have a greater globalization of commerce and industry, and laws, and regulations follow that as well. So many schools are probably expanding their course offerings to cover that.
Sure. International law, a big growth area. So, I've talked to professors who lead courses that are specific to doing business in Latin America or in China. And, they talk about the different ways the courts function in those jurisdictions and how the, laws from different countries interplay when you have a legal matter that crosses borders. So there's definitely interest in those classes. And I think students are interested in classes that they think are going to be relevant to whatever career they want to have. And they know that international law is a growing area, so they want to position themselves to get the jobs that are going to deal with that.
And is the ability to speak a foreign language help a student get into law school or help them with their legal career?
This is an area I know a little bit less about, but I have heard some schools actually have programs specifically for Spanish-speaking attorneys. So these are students who are Spanish speakers, and these classes help them brush up on sort of the legalese in Spanish. You may speak Spanish, but you don't necessarily know how to communicate complex legal concepts to clients who are Spanish-speaking, or how to relate to Spanish-speaking clients. So I don't know from the admissions front, but I know from the legal hiring front that having Chinese language or Spanish is an advantage in terms of getting a law firm job.
And also, in the past few years, have many more foreign attorneys come to the United States to take a master's program or perhaps a JD so they can perhaps work or get a license to practice law somewhere in the U.S.?
Yes, that is the one growth area in law school enrollment right now. And LLM programs, which are master's degree programs, one-year master's degree programs for attorneys who are licensed in other countries. They come to the U.S., they spend a year at a U.S. law school, and after that, they are entitled to sit for the New York bar exam. Now, most of them go back to their home countries. They see this as a credential that they can take back to, burnish their resumes back home. But it's the growth has come at a good time for law schools because all of a sudden they find themselves with empty seats. U.S. students aren't as interested as going to law school right now. So they have empty capacity. They can have these foreign attorneys come. And the foreign attorneys typically pay full tuition, unlike most of the U.S. students. So it's really become an important revenue generator to have these overseas attorneys come, spend a year getting their LLM, and then returning.
And in terms of earning credentials in law school and getting a valuable law school experience, are students more and more involved in clinical programs?
Sure. Practical training, experiential training is a big focus in legal education right now. Law schools are kind of moving away from the all-lecture format. I mean, there's still a lot of lecture courses. But the American Bar Association last year added a requirement that students have to complete 6 credits of experiential learning. So that means a clinic would count, an externship working in, as basically an intern at a law firm or another legal organization counts. Simulation courses where professors, students stand in as an attorney and they work with simulated clients, perhaps on a simulated business negotiation or something along those lines. That counts. And this is something students really want. I think they understand that employers are looking for as much practical experience as they can get from new hires. And, working in a clinic or having an externship on your resume can make you stand out from the crowd. So in addition to the pressures coming down from the ABA as a regulator, students also want it.
And also, if you're working in a clinic, you may be helping someone who can't afford an attorney. So you're performing pro bono work and helping them with their legal problems as well.
Sure, that's true. Lots of clinics do have a pro bono angle. I mean, of course, you could also have policy clinics and clinics doing all sorts of other things, but there is a very important sort of pro bono aspect to it.
And it is important for a student to also try to work as an intern or summer associate to have a better chance of getting a job after law school?
Definitely. The traditional trajectory is that after you finish your first year, lots of students will do something public service or public interest oriented. Volunteer for a, legal services, legal aid type group, or some other volunteer or public interest job for that summer. And then the summer after your second year, traditionally, you may be a clerk at a law firm or work in some more, in any sort of a law firm environment. And then after your third year, then you would be graduated, taking the bar, and hopefully landing yourself a full-time job.
Okay, we have to take a short break now. We're talking with Karen Sloan. She's the reporter for the National